Okay, Jimmy, next up is Kenneth Beasley and Bull. Kenneth and Bull come to us from Westbrook, Texas. He's a fellow Texan with you. And Kenneth and Bull scored 255 points combined in his first two preliminary runs. He only dropped 15 points. There's a 270 possible. And so Kenneth is in a good spot and should contend for a national title if he and Bull can put a good run together here.
Kenneth and Bull have been working together for several years now. Kenneth's real active down in Lone Star State and has been president of our Southwest Cattledog Association. So they certainly have the ability to lay one down here.
And Bull heads up the hill there onto the south fence. You can see that the storm clouds are kind of threatening from the south there. Hasn't rained yet today, actually never did rain, although it certainly looked like it could have a couple of times.
I tell you, rain or not, we couldn't be in a more beautiful spot for a national finals.
Yeah, you know, the weather that you guys have had down in Texas, I imagine Kenneth would probably start dancing if it started raining on him out there. Probably been a while since it's rained on you Texans down there the last couple of years.
Absolutely. We've kind of forgotten what it looks like. They're coming off the hill really nice, typical fast trot coming down the hill. He's flanked the dog around to the right so that he can point him back in the direction of the other cattle. I think that was a good move on his part. You certainly don't want to create two bunches out of this. You want one bunch. And so since these didn't come straight off the hill towards the other three, I thought that was a good idea on his part to turn those cattle back. If the cattle go to getting too fast, because of the nature of the course, we know it can be beneficial sometime to just stop the flow. Typically, just stop the flow, and because if they get running on their mind, then it can get out of hand in a hurry.
That's right, and it affects the mind of the dog too when those cattle are running down the hill. You want the dog to be listening in order to make this first fetch obstacle, these panels that they're approaching right now that Kenneth is setting up, and cattle that are running away can kind of make a dog, all they want to think about is getting them stopped instead of flanking or stopping exactly where you want them to make that obstacle. So if you can take a slow, steady approach to any of these obstacles, you're going to have a lot better chances of good communication and not having to panic yourself and do things too fast.
Looks like Kenneth had just a little bit of a miss here. Some of the lead cattle were wanting to take off on him and got around the end of that panel. But you are allowed to retry as many times as you'd like. You can retry until you get all the points you're satisfied with. It seems like he's missed one here. What he'll need to do is push these cattle back to the right side, what we call daylight in the obstacle, and then restart them to attempt to get full points. I would think after the run we saw with Kayleen a while ago, it may take a full point score to move up in the standings.
You know, and that's the thing when you get a full point score and a really nice run like Kayleen had early on in this open final day, is it puts the pressure on and everybody, it gives them something to shoot for. And there Kenneth had another calf duck out on the side of that. I thought he had everything in position, but he got one head always wanting to duck out on him, but he's kept everything under control. The cattle are quiet. He's going to take Bull around and try and daylight him again. And again, folks, the daylight means that they can pass through the obstacle in the opposite direction that they score. But once they clear that plane and are cleanly on the other side of the obstacle, they can turn them around and put them back through those panels. So here we go with take 3 with this fetch obstacle. And Bull is in position and the cattle are ready to go. Kenneth is going to get him flanked around, and there we go, another calf ducked around, another single. So we'll see what Kenneth does here.
Yeah, he does not have
looks like right. He can take his points and just drop his 5 points on that obstacle, where he just decided, you know what, we gave her three tries and had one calf. With the all black heifers, you can't tell if it's the same calf or they're just taking turns. But he decided to move on, and there's more points on the course, so we're going to drop that 5 and He'd only dropped 15 coming in, and so he's going to move on, and he's got to get these cattle back around that, or at least daylighted, and cross that timeline from away from him to towards him, from the south to the east, to score points on that timeline next.
You know, the ultimate champion is going to be determined more than likely by total possible points, but total time also plays a role, and Kenneth was probably thinking there that I've made several attempts at this and I'm using a lot of time. I've got a lot more course left to do.
That's right. That's right. And not just time, but there's a lot of points out there, this sort, and you know that when you pen 3 head and then sort those other 3 head, 2 and 1, it's going to take some time out there. So he's got to be moving along on this course in order not to time out later on. We'll see if that time he spent on that fetch panel comes back and gets him or not.
Well, you know, I personally, in the nursery class, had a run where I went back and reattempted an obstacle to get 5 more points, and because of that I ran out of time and didn't get to exhaust my cattle, and therefore I lost 15 points. So you've got to consider what's the lesser of evils, and I think Kenneth decided here that the lesser of evils would be to move on. Yep. And try to make sure he's got enough time.
It's always a little bit of a gamble which call you need to make. You never know if that 5 points is what you needed or if you were going to time out. And you really needed that, like you said, that extra 15 points at the end to put you a little bit higher or maybe even get you the win. So
exactly, and for me it would have made a difference. Now we're seeing what we discussed earlier. The cattle have been exhausted off the field for several days out through this northeast corner gate, and that's where the pressure seems to be right now.
Right, and they want to go there, but the nice thing about it, these cattle are well broke and accustomed to the dogs, and it doesn't really require a whole lot of convincing on the dog's part. They're willing to move off of the dog's pressure and move on up the hill. They tend to spread out a little bit, and we've seen that in previous runs. Kayleen had a little bit of that, and Kenneth is too, where they want to kind of scatter a little bit and do their own thing and just get comfortable down there in that corner. But Bull's going to convince him to move on up the hill.
Now we're beginning our drive, and we see Kenneth moving up the fence row a little bit. The handlers are allowed to move up the fence row up to a certain point.
That's right. And it's a little bit difficult to see it on video, but there is a mowed line where that handler's line was. You could see it in line with that camera when those cattle were down in the corner. There's a mowed line that the handler knows he can't cross. You can see it just there in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen where the grass is shorter there, and Kenneth can go up to there but not past. So it gives the handler the ability to get a little bit different perspective and see at a distance those lines, and it makes just seeing that obstacle and helping your dog and being able to tell him where to be a little bit easier by being able to change position.
Unfortunately for Kenneth, those cattle wanted to go up that fence. Now, many times, if we're working at the ranch, using a fence row is quite helpful. But here, because our first drive panels are freestanding out in the field, having those cattle over against the fence makes it a little more difficult. They've got to be turned off of that fence and brought over, which Kenneth and Bull did a good job of. The dog was willing to go up beside those cattle next to the fence, turn that lead cow around and get them off the fence, and I think he's setting up for a good first panel here.
Yep, he's got his drive panel just about completed here for another 5 points ahead, and is going to be moving on to the cross drive, has that completed. You can see the clouds are looking pretty dark over the hill there, and the cattle are pretty quiet and wanting to graze, and that was pretty typical for the weather that Kenneth and Bull are seeing right now. It definitely slowed everything down. The cattle just kind of wanted to sit when we had these weather conditions today.
Well, like you mentioned earlier, these conditions is not something Bull has been working in.
No, he's not used to working with rain clouds overhead, that's
right.
for sure.
That's right. He thinks he's inside. But it is good for the dogs. Having a little bit of freshness to the air makes it easier on the dogs here. And this is a 15-minute course, and so it can get exhausting having to go move cattle around right and left.
That's right. We'll see fatigue play a factor in some of the runs today, I'm sure. You know, it helps, I think, today that most of these dogs have been at this elevation. You know, we're around 8,000 feet in elevation, which is a lot higher than where I'm from and where you're from and where most of the dogs are from. I'm sure it's a lot higher than where Kenneth is from, and that is a pretty good hill. You and I both have hiked up and down that and hauled panels up and down that hill this week, and you definitely notice that you're not in Iowa or Texas anymore. That's when you start hauling something up that hill.
That's right. That's right. Okay, Kenneth is headed for the tee, we call it, and he has to stay in the mode area that the handler stands to negotiate this obstacle, just using his voice and whistle commands to have the dog direct the cattle into the tee. So they must enter over here on the west side, but then they can go right and left either way, going out on the east side.
Yeah, and that'll be the last obstacle where Kenneth is restricted to that handler's area. Once he's got his cattle clear through that tee, he is going to be able to walk, and he has to remain at a walk. He can't run. We don't want the handlers laying the dog down and chasing the cattle around themselves with any kind of speed. So we want the dog to do the majority of the work. But because of the nature of the pen and the sword obstacles, Kenneth will be free to go wherever he wants at a walk. I'm pretty sure Kenneth probably wouldn't run anywhere anyway, but he'll be able to walk around and help the dog move the cattle through the remainder of the course.
With cattle kind of spread out in the mouth of this thing, we're seeing real good dog control on Bull, moving the dog right and left, turning ahead here, turning ahead there. That's one of the things we try to demonstrate through our dog trials is good training and good handling, and I think that was a good example of it.
Bull did a really nice job reading that flight zone, and that's something that's nice to see. You know, it's those more experienced cattle dogs. Bull's seen a lot of cattle in his life, and he understands the place to be, where that balance point is on the cattle and where the flight zone is and where to be in their eye in order to get what Kenneth wants as far as movement of the cattle. Here the cattle come up to that pen. He's got 2 head in. He just needs 1 more in that pen. Here he's got a volunteer and he's ready to shut the gate. He's getting
got a bonus there.
That's right. 4 head. He doesn't get extra points for 4 head. It's got to be 3. So he's going to have to come back and pull 1 out of there. And this is just burning Kenneth's time. He's got an allotted 12 minutes here, but now he's apparently got them. They just want to go in pairs, and so he's got 2 in, and he's got 4 out. He just needs to pull 1 of those calves back in now. And so, like we were talking earlier at the fetch obstacle, he's got some work to do yet, and the clock's ticking. So he needs to get 1 head in there pretty quickly and head on up to the sword obstacle.
There we go.
Yep, he's got 3 in there now and scored on that obstacle, 5 points ahead. And so they scored 10 points ahead on that pen, and then he's going to come up here to the sort, and it's going to score 10 points ahead as well. Now, Bull's a little bit mixed up here. He went onto those cattle into the pen, and Kenneth says, "No, Bull, we're coming over here, leave those alone, and we're working these 3," and he figured that right out. So they're moving on to that alleyway.
This opening on the east side of this obstacle is not real wide, is it?
No, it's not. There's room for about 1, maybe 2 head. 2 head if they kind of crowd there. You got the back 2 in there, shoulder to shoulder, but all 3 can't enter it shoulder to shoulder for sure. So here he is, and they're in the pen, and so he's got those points scored. He can't lose those, and now he's got to get 2 head out the far exit, and he's got to get 1 head out the exit to his right on that west end of that box. So, and it doesn't matter which order he takes them out of there. He's just got to get 1 out that hole, and it looks like he's got a volunteer for that, if he can get him nudged up. Oh, Kenneth, yep, he maybe would have liked to run there, but he got it done backwards of what the course really calls for 4 full points. He got 2 out the west exit and 1 out the south, Now I think it looks like Kenneth is going to go back and re-enter. And
So according to the rules, he cannot come back in those holes where he exited.
That's right. A cattle can only score if they enter through the entrance. So if just a single one out there, right, he's starting over his sort. The points that he got on that pen are written down on the scorer's table and they can't be lost. And what he's retrying now is the sort. And so again, he has to get one head out that hole to his right or the west, and another hole, two head out the south hole to the south. So here he walks Bull up a little bit. Oh, got all three out that hole that time. And so kind of like the fetch panel, this is his third try at this. Nope, can't come in there. He'll have to daylight them all. If they go out that entrance alleyway, like it looks like they're gonna, he'll have to daylight them all the way. Every tail will have to clear the plane of that entrance and turn them around and put them back in to retry that sort. At this point, this is pretty much the last obstacle other than letting things out. So, okay, there we go. Looks like Kenneth has run out of time.
Wow.
There was a couple of retries there, like we were saying on that fetch, that really cost him through the course. And that'll give Kenneth 220 points and 475 total. So really good preliminary runs, but kind of a disappointing final for Kenneth.
Unfortunately, had the cattle shouldered up and stayed together a little better, it would have saved him on some time, probably.
That's right. He had that one duck out through the fetch panel, and he made a couple retries, both at the pen and the sort, and he just took too much time doing those elements.
We're talking with Kenneth Beasley of Colorado City, Texas, and his good dog Bull. Now, Kenneth, y'all just came off the open field. How did your run go?
Well, it wasn't great. The dog worked good and handled the cattle real well, but we had a little trouble when we got over in the sorting pen and couldn't get them sorted just like we needed to. But we got along okay, but it wasn't a great run.
Did you feel like the course was a sure enough challenge?
Oh yeah, it's a real challenge when you have to bring cattle off of the top of the hill and mix with another set and then drive and cross drive way up on top of the hill. Well, it's a real challenge, and then doing the sort. And it's a good course, really good course.
Now, over the course of your lifetime, you've done a lot of ranching in Colorado City, is that right?
Well, mainly just run a few mother cows, not a whole lot, but and some stocker cattle on wheat really back when it rained. We've been in like a 5-year drought, so there's not a whole lot of cattle left in our country, but I started using dogs just to use on my cattle so I could pen my cattle and work them, and then I got into the trialing, and it's really been a lot of fun. Competition and camaraderie and meeting all the people has been a lot of fun.
Exactly. You get to mix with folks that you wouldn't otherwise get to know, and not only get to know them, you get to know their dogs and possibly change the direction of your kennels maybe by some breeding you wasn't aware was out there.
Yes, that's true. We've met people from all over the country, you know, and we bought a few dogs from other people and mixed with our breeding, and so it's been good, and we've met people from all over, and that's been good for us.
Do you feel like the national finals can, if we could get the word out and get this video out to folks who haven't been involved in dogs, you feel like we could get some interest going?
Oh yeah, I think so. And of course, this being the first year, I think it went really well, and I just see it getting better and better every year and bringing in more people all the time and getting more interest.